Hey everybody, welcome to day 16. I am going to talk about a question somebody posted on my last video. Thank you, Stacy, for this question. Stacy asked me, how does exhaustion affect attitude? I've been to meetings where the same thing gets talked about. It's exhausting to keep up the positive attitude to talk about the same thing month after month. Where I go with that, so I was actually teaching this morning, teaching collaboration skills this morning, and when I was talking about these 5 styles of conflict resolution, as I am wont to do, and so there's compete, avoid, accommodate, collaborate, and compromise. And what I said, and I say this often, so what I said was that if you use any one of those styles to the exclusion of any other, you will have conflict, including collaboration. So if you collaborate, if you only use collaboration, I think you will have conflict, because there are times where competition is the most appropriate style. There's times where avoid is the most appropriate style. There's times where accommodate or compromise is the most appropriate style. And I think people can get really fatigued from conflict as well. And I've experienced that myself. I try to walk my talk and I try to be collaborative in everything I do. And sometimes that doesn't really work, right? There's times where collaboration really is not the most effective use or most effective style of conflict solving. I gave the example this morning of roller derby. So I was involved in starting the first roller derby league for PEI about 8 years ago, and I was the first president, and the next president after me was also someone with these skills, with mediator skills, and then the next president was also somebody who had taken training from me. So we were a very collaborative bunch, even though we were collaborating about knocking people off their roller skates as we skated around a track. But still, it was very collaborative, and we did a lot of work. And as you can imagine, I facilitated, as did the people who came after me, a lot of opportunity for input and collaboration. And there came a point where there was what I consider to be collaboration fatigue, where people really just wanted someone to make the decision. Styles where if you only use that one style over and over to the exclusion of all others, you will have conflict, and of course that includes collaboration. So that's one thing that I think of when I think of that question that Stacy asked. So I'll just remind people of that question. How does exhaustion, or what I might consider to be sort of collaboration fatigue, how does exhaustion affect attitude? I've been to meetings where the same thing gets talked about. It's exhausting to keep up the positive attitude, to talk about the same thing month after month. Another thing that I think about, when I read that question is that if you don't have a process, if you don't have a way to move towards decision, people will get tired, people will get exhausted, people will start to feel like they're wasting their time and that nothing's ever going to get done. The process that I teach, the process that I facilitate, is one where you're not moving to solutions right away, which is what we typically do. Typically we have, here's the problem, let's talk about the solution. And what I teach is, here's the problem, let's figure out what the needs are that have to be met. Let's redefine the problem in light of those needs, and now let's talk about how we're going to solve it. But if you never get to the how, then it's going to be frustrating for people. And if you don't have a process that you're following, if you're just having discussions and you're trying to be collaborative, but maybe you don't necessarily have a particular style or process that you use to be collaborative, then you can, I think, find yourself in that sort of circle, that cycle that Stacy's talking about, where you just keep talking about the same thing, but there's no action ever taken. And so the process that I teach, it's very much about action, and it's very structured to move towards really really concrete action that truly satisfies the needs that have to be met. I think, sometimes I think about too, like I used to be a waitress when I was going to law school, all through my undergrad and law school, I was a waitress. And so sometimes I would say, like, people who serve maybe are the biggest tippers, but they also expect to be well served. So as a facilitator, I think I've carried that into my professional life too. It's kind of painful when you are a facilitator or you're someone who has some facilitation skills to be in a process that's not well facilitated. And not everybody has these skills. Not everybody knows how to move things forward in a process toward concrete action that truly satisfies the needs. And so having a process and having some skills, and you don't need to be a professional mediator to lead people through a process like that, but having that structured process really does help, and it helps to keep people engaged. I wonder if Stacey's talking about maybe a volunteer situation. Maybe you're on a board and you're giving your time, and so is the chair, right? And so if the chair has some access to a little bit of training around process and around the skills to move people towards concrete action in a way that feels good, that feels collaborative, it really can contribute to keeping volunteers engaged, keeping people feeling excited about the forward movement, but also helping people feel like they are heard and valued and have a voice in the process. So it's really valuable. It's really valuable to have the process, really valuable to have the skills, really valuable to keeping people engaged, whether we're talking about workplace, volunteer situation, whatever. Because I do think Stacey's right. It is exhausting to keep the positive attitude up and talk about the same thing month after month and not see any action. So thanks for that question, Stacey. Great question. I appreciate the opportunity to muse about it. So happy Friday, everybody. And I say have a good weekend, but I'll see you tomorrow.